Life doesn't break you because of pain. It breaks you when pain starts deciding who you are. The Stoics knew this 2,000 years ago. It's not events that destroy a person, it's the thoughts they choose to feed when everything falls apart. Pain isn't the end of your story. It's the test that reveals whether you'll be a victim of circumstances or the author of your own posture in life. If you learn to respond instead of simply react, what hurts today can become exactly what will strengthen you forever. Pain as an inevitable part of existence. Stoic philosophy begins with a radical acceptance of reality. Pain is part of life. No human being crosses existence without loss, frustration, or suffering. For the Stoics, resisting that truth only intensifies pain because it creates an internal war against what's unavoidable. When something difficult happens, there's the direct impact of the event: loss, humiliation, rejection, illness, a plan falling apart. But then, almost always, a second layer appears: mental resistance. The mind says, "This shouldn't be happening. This is unfair. I didn't deserve this. My life can't be like this." And it's exactly that second layer that usually prolongs suffering, because it turns a fact into an inner conflict. The Stoics observed that reality doesn't negotiate with personal preferences. The universe doesn't change course because we're tired, wounded, or afraid. When someone tries to force life to fit a rigid idea of how it should be, they enter a constant war with the world, and that war is lost from the start. Stoic acceptance isn't weakness, it's clarity, seeing what is without distortion, and then choosing the smartest response. Radical acceptance doesn't mean liking what happened or pretending it doesn't hurt. It means stopping yourself from adding poison to the wound. It means acknowledging, "This happened," and from that point, regaining the ability to act with clarity. Many people confuse acceptance with resignation, but in Stoicism, acceptance is the first step toward the right action. It's like a doctor who doesn't panic at a diagnosis. They face the fact in order to treat what can be treated. That principle completely changes your relationship with suffering. Instead of asking, "How do I stop feeling pain?" the question becomes, "How can I live well despite the pain?" And that shift is liberating because it puts your focus on what can still be built. Pain stops being a sign of failure and becomes part of the path, an inevitable terrain where the mind can train firmness, discipline, and courage. The Stoics knew that much of human suffering comes from the expectation of total control. We want to guarantee that nothing will go wrong, that no one will abandon us, that our plans will be respected, that our efforts will pay off immediately. When life breaks those expectations, pain appears. And resistance to that break is what destroys us from the inside. Radical acceptance teaches this. The world is unstable, and that's precisely why stability must be internal. In practice, that mindset creates a stronger emotional foundation. A person doesn't collapse simply because life includes loss. They prepare for it without cynicism, but with realism. They understand that suffering isn't a detour from the path, it is part of the path. And when that understanding settles in, something powerful happens. Pain still exists, but it stops controlling you. The mind stops being a battlefield and becomes a place of decision. If you want, I can expand this even further with everyday examples: breakups, job loss, grief, betrayal, failure, and how a Stoic would apply acceptance in each case. Epictetus: events don't disturb us, our judgments do. Epictetus taught that it's not events that disturb us, but the judgments we make about them. Pain, in itself, is a neutral fact. Prolonged suffering is born from the interpretation we give that pain, the story we tell ourselves about it. When something happens, there's the raw fact. I was rejected, I lost money, I was criticized, as someone pulled away, I got sick, the plan failed. That's the event. Then, almost instantly, the mind creates a narrative. This proves I'm not enough. This is the end. I'll never recover. No one respects me. I have no value. That narrative isn't the event. It's a judgment, a conclusion. And for the Stoics, that's where suffering multiplies. Physical or emotional pain may be inevitable, but interpretation is trainable. Epictetus called this prohairesis, the inner faculty of choosing how to respond. You don't control everything that happens, but you do control the meaning you assign to it. When you change the meaning, you change the intensity and duration of pain. The sensation may remain, but despair, humiliation, and panic don't have to take over. Think about criticism. The fact is, someone said something negative about you. The judgment could be, I'm a failure. They're attacking me. This is unforgivable. But it could also be, is there something useful here? Are they projecting? This doesn't define me. I can adjust what's reasonable and keep going. Same event, completely different inner experience. That's why the Stoics said pain is neutral in the philosophical sense. It doesn't come with a mandatory meaning. We are the ones who attach a label: tragedy, injustice, humiliation, the end of the world. And often those labels carry more destructive power than the event itself. When the mind dramatizes, it turns a wound into an identity. A person isn't just going through something hard, they become it. The story we tell ourselves can trap us or free us. Some stories make us small. This happened because I'm worthless. I'll always suffer. Life is against me. Others strengthen us. This hurts, but I can move through it. This taught me something real. This isn't the end, it's a chapter. I don't control the event, but I control my posture. Stoicism doesn't demand naive positivity. It demands rational interpretation. A practical Stoic technique is to coldly separate fact from judgment. Mentally write 2 columns. In the first, only what happened without adjectives. In the second, what you're telling yourself about it. Almost always, the poison lives in the second column. And when you see that, space opens up to choose a different reading, more fair, more useful, more true. Prolonged suffering, then, is often the repetition of the narrative. The event already passed, but the mind replays it, reenacts it, expands it, builds future scenarios, feeds resentment. Epictetus would say, you're being carried by automatic judgments. The path to freedom is to take back inner governance, question the thought, weaken the useless story, and replace it with an interpretation that produces action, dignity, and rebuilding. If you want, I can rewrite this as an even stronger paragraph for a video script, more punch rhythm, short lines, or as an explanation with very concrete examples: breakups, grief, betrayal, job loss. From why me to what now? When you understand that pain isn't a personal injustice, but a universal condition, you begin to free yourself from resentment. That shift in perspective is the first step toward turning pain into something useful instead of destructive. Resentment is almost always born from a silent idea. This shouldn't have happened to me. It's as if life broke an invisible contract, promising protection, stability, and custom-made fairness. When that expectation is shattered, pain mixes with indignation, and indignation becomes a prison. You don't suffer only because of what you lost. You suffer because you believe you were singled out. Stoicism breaks that root error by reminding you of a simple, uncomfortable truth. No one is immune. Loss, rejection, illness, change, and frustration are part of existence, not because the world is evil, but because reality is dynamic, impermanent, and indifferent to personal preferences. Understanding that doesn't remove pain, but it removes the fantasy that pain is proof you're being targeted. When you realize suffering is universal, something shifts inside you. Instead of "why me?" you get "why not me?" That question isn't cynicism, it's maturity. It dissolves the sense of existential offense that fuels resentment. And without resentment, the mind is free to choose the next step. Resentment is destructive because it keeps you tied to the past in a sick way. It demands emotional repayment for something that already happened and often can't be fixed. It turns life energy into constant accusation at fate, at people, at life itself. And in that accusation, you stop building because you're busy trying to prove you were wronged. The universal perspective shifts the axis. The question stops being, "Who do I blame?" and becomes, "What do I do with this?" That's where pain starts to generate utility. Utility here isn't romanticizing suffering or motivational cliches. It's using the event as raw material for better decisions, clearer boundaries, emotional discipline, character strengthening, and purpose realignment. In the Stoic view, pain becomes destructive when it turns into identity. I'm the betrayed one, I'm the rejected one, I'm the failure. But it becomes useful when it becomes information. I learned what I won't accept. I discovered my vulnerability. I understood my pattern. I saw where I need to grow. Same event, two possible outcomes, and the difference is interpretation and where your energy goes. That's the first real step of transformation, leaving the posture of a victim of the universe and entering the posture of a student of reality. Not because life is fair, but because you choose clarity. From that point on, pain stops being just a blow and becomes training. And from training, something is born that resentment can never produce: strength with purpose. Feeling pain isn't being ruled by it. The Stoics didn't defend denying emotional pain. On the contrary, they recognized it fully. But they taught that feeling pain doesn't mean being dominated by it. There's a crucial difference between feeling and completely identifying with suffering. Denying pain is self-deception. It's trying to skip the human experience and jump straight into false stability. The Stoics saw that as dangerous because whatever is repressed tends to return with more force. You can push emotion down for a while, but it comes back as constant irritability, anxiety, bitterness, or impulses you don't understand. Recognizing pain, on the other hand, is honesty. It's looking inward and naming precisely, "This hurt me. I'm afraid. I feel loss. I feel shame. I feel frustration." That clarity matters because you can only govern what you can see. The mind can't regulate emotions it pretends don't exist. The Stoic point isn't "don't feel," it's "don't be dragged." You feel the emotion, but you keep a part of yourself in the position of observer. That part says, "There is pain here, but I am not pain." It's a subtle but powerful separation between experience and identity. When someone fully identifies with suffering, pain becomes a definition. The thought shifts from "I'm suffering" to "I am suffering." That's when inner phrases appear. "My life is over. I'll never be happy. I'll always be this way." That identification creates a mental tunnel. Everything gets filtered through the wound. The Stoics would call that emotional slavery. Not because feeling is weakness, but because losing inner command is becoming a hostage. Emotion starts deciding for you. Your words, impulses, reactions, choices, and decisions made under emotional domination often create new problems, amplifying the original pain. The Stoic alternative is the discipline of response. You allow the emotional wave to exist, but you don't hand it the steering wheel. You observe the peak, breathe, wait for the intensity to drop, and choose action based on reason and virtue. That isn't coldness, it's psychological maturity. It's feeling deeply without collapsing. Practically speaking, feeling is inevitable, feeding is optional. The emotion arrives like a spark. If you add fuel through rumination, catastrophic imagination, and stories of injustice, it becomes a wildfire. If you recognize it, validate it, and let it pass without dramatizing, the spark fades. Pain exists, but it doesn't dominate. That's a Stoic secret that changes lives. You don't have to win against emotion by force. You have to refuse fusion with it. Pain can be present, but you remain larger than it. And when that posture becomes a habit, suffering stops being a prison and becomes a temporary experience. Difficult, yes, but governable. Pain as a teacher. When pain is seen as a teacher, it stops being only a weight. Every hard experience carries a lesson about limits, values, and priorities. Ignoring that lesson is wasting an opportunity for growth. Pain interrupts the illusion of control. It forces pauses, revisions, and questions we usually avoid when we're comfortable. While pleasure tends to keep us on autopilot, suffering forces us to look closely at how we're living, choosing, and reacting. In that sense, pain teaches not through kindness, but through necessity. One of the first lessons pain reveals is limits, emotional, physical, mental, and even moral. It shows where we're overextending, where we're accepting less than we deserve, or demanding from ourselves more than we can sustain. Many people only learn to say no after pain shows the cost of saying yes to everything. Pain also reshapes values. What seemed essential before a loss, a crisis, or an inner collapse often looks superficial afterward. Things that once took up a lot of space, status, approval, manufactured urgencies, lose power. In contrast, quieter values gain weight. Inner stability, real relationships, time, health, coherence. Priorities shift because pain reveals what truly matters when the unnecessary falls away. The Stoics saw this as a process of refinement. Adversity removes excess, illusions, and unrealistic expectations, leaving only what's solid enough to remain. It isn't comfortable, but it is clarifying. Ignoring pain's lesson often leads to repetition. Unseen patterns tend to return in new forms. Toxic relationships show up with different faces. Impulsive decisions produce similar consequences. Unlearned suffering charges its price again until awareness opens. Learning from pain doesn't mean justifying what happened or romanticizing suffering. It means extracting practical meaning. Useful Stoic questions are, what did this reveal about me? What error in judgment was exposed? What virtue does this situation demand now? What can I no longer ignore? Those questions turn pain into direction. When you adopt that posture, something changes deeply. You stop fearing pain itself and start fearing wasting it. Not in a masochistic sense, but in the sense of refusing to come out of the experience unchanged, or worse. Pain remains difficult, but it gains function. And when pain gains function, it stops being just suffering. It becomes a turning point. Stoic acceptance is not passivity. Stoic acceptance isn't passivity, it's clarity. By accepting reality as it is, you gain energy to act where control still exists, instead of wasting strength fighting what's inevitable. Many people confuse acceptance with giving up. They think accepting a hard situation means settling, swallowing injustice, or abandoning any attempt to change things. For the Stoics, that's a major conceptual mistake. Acceptance isn't about what you do, it's about the mental starting point from which you act. To accept is to recognize facts without emotional distortion. It's looking at a situation and saying, this is what's happening now. No exaggeration, no victimhood, no denial. That lucidity cuts the energy loss caused by mental resistance, the constant inner fight against something that already happened and can't be undone. When the mind stops fighting the past or what lies outside your control, a massive amount of psychological energy is released. That energy, previously wasted on complaining, anger, and rumination, can finally be directed into practical decisions. The next step, the necessary adjustment, the most intelligent move. The Stoics were intensely action-oriented. Epictetus made it clear, after accepting what doesn't depend on you, you must act with maximum discipline on what does. Acceptance doesn't paralyze, it organizes. It draws clear borders between the useless and the possible. Fighting the inevitable creates chronic exhaustion. It's like pushing a wall and expecting it to move. You get tired, frustrated, and lose the ability to act effectively. But the one who accepts the wall looks for the door, goes around the obstacle, or changes route with strategy. Stoic clarity also reduces impulsive reactions. When you accept reality, you don't need to act from panic. You can wait for the right moment, assess risks, and choose the response most aligned with reason and virtue. That dramatically improves decision-making quality. In the end, Stoic acceptance is a form of practical intelligence. It doesn't promise immediate comfort, but it offers something more valuable: direction. By stopping the fight against what can't be changed, you regain control over what can still be built. And it's in that space of control that purpose begins to take shape. So the first Stoic secret is simple but profound. Pain isn't the enemy. The real enemy is blind resistance to reality. Inner control, where purpose is born. One of Stoicism's central pillars is the distinction between what is under our control and what isn't. That separation is fundamental for turning pain into purpose. When we try to control the uncontrollable, we create unnecessary anguish. Epictetus was direct. Some things depend on us and others do not. This simple distinction, when ignored, is responsible for much of human suffering. We spend energy trying to control outcomes, other people's opinions, their behavior, the past, the future, and even randomness. And inevitably we fail, because none of that is truly ours to command. What is under our control is far more limited, but infinitely more powerful: our judgments, choices, intentions, and attitudes. The problem is that these areas demand responsibility. It's easier to try to control the world than to govern your own mind. That's why most people live frustrated, trying to adjust the outside to avoid discomfort inside. When pain appears, the automatic tendency is to want it to disappear immediately. We want the situation to change, the person to come back, the mistake erased, the damage undone. That insistence creates constant friction between desire and reality. The result is anxiety, anger, and helplessness. The Stoic separation cuts that friction at the root. By recognizing what can't be changed, the mind stops thrashing uselessly. That doesn't eliminate pain, but it eliminates the despair that comes from the failed attempt at total control. Pain becomes a fact to work with, not an enemy to defeat by force. This principle is liberating because it returns focus. Instead of asking, "How do I keep this from happening?" you ask, "How should I act now?" Instead of waiting for the world to adjust to your expectations, you adjust your response to the real world. That's where purpose begins to emerge, in conscious action within the limits of what's possible. When control is properly understood, pain stops being paralyzing. It becomes a signal that directs attention inward. What does this situation require of me in terms of character? Courage, patience, discipline, humility, firmness. Every pain calls for a specific virtue. Turning pain into purpose isn't changing the event, it's changing the axis of life. The axis stops being what happens to me and becomes who I choose to be in the face of what happens. And in that shift, unnecessary anguish loses ground, giving rise to something rare and powerful: inner command in the middle of uncertainty. The two spheres. According to the Stoics, our opinions, choices, and attitudes are within our domain. External events, other people's actions, and final outcomes are not. Pain often arises when we confuse these two spheres. That confusion shows up subtly and constantly. We want to control how others treat us, how they react to our decisions, whether they recognize our effort, whether they stay. We also try to guarantee specific outcomes: success, approval, stability, emotional payoff. When those outcomes don't arrive, we feel frustration, anger, or discouragement, not only because of what happened, but because we placed control where we never had it. The Stoics warned that this misplaced responsibility is a permanent source of suffering. When you place your peace in external factors, you become vulnerable to every change. The mind lives on alert, trying to predict, fix, or force behaviors that don't depend on you. That creates ongoing tension and emotional burnout. Meanwhile, what is truly yours to govern is often neglected. Automatic opinions, impulsive reactions, and inconsistent attitudes go unexamined. A person feels powerless, when in fact they're ignoring the only area where power is real: the inner response. Pain intensifies when someone thinks, "I can't stand that this happened. I need this to change so I can be okay. I'll only be at peace when other people do X or Y." That kind of thinking ties well-being to external conditions, creating emotional dependence on the uncontrollable. Stoicism proposes a radical inversion. Accept that the world won't adapt to your expectations, and focus on adapting your attitude to reality. That doesn't mean becoming cold or indifferent, but realistic. You can desire an outcome and work toward it without putting your emotional stability on the line. When that distinction becomes clear, pain loses some of its power to destabilize. Even if the external event is negative, the person keeps a firm inner base. They understand they may lose things, people or opportunities, but they don't have to lose command of themselves. In the end, confusing these spheres is what turns difficulties into prolonged suffering. Stoic clarity, on the other hand, restores autonomy. You stop demanding from the world what only you can give yourself: balance, direction, and dignity in the face of what isn't up to you. Pain as training. When you direct attention to inner control, pain stops being a sentence and becomes a training ground. Every challenge becomes an opportunity to practice virtues like patience, courage, and self-discipline. When pain is seen as a sentence, it carries the idea of an ending. The end of peace, the end of hope, the end of moving forward. That view paralyzes because it frames suffering as something definitive, something you can only endure until it passes, or that may never pass. Stoicism breaks that logic by redefining the role of adversity. For the Stoics, life is continuous character training. Nothing that happens is wasted if it's used to train the mind. Pain, in that context, stops being punishment and becomes a test. Not a test imposed by cruelty, but a challenge that reveals and strengthens virtues that would remain asleep in permanent comfort. Patience, for example, develops only when things don't happen at the pace you want. The pain of delay, waiting, and uncertainty is the natural environment where patience is trained. Without inner resistance, patience stops being passive and becomes emotional steadiness. Courage doesn't appear in the absence of fear, but in its presence. Painful situations expose vulnerability, risk, and possible loss. Acting with integrity despite discomfort strengthens real courage, the kind that isn't based on blind confidence, but on commitment to values. Self-discipline shows itself when emotion demands escape, excess, or impulsive reaction. Pain often pushes us toward immediate short-term decisions: attack, quit, numb, blame. Maintaining inner control in those moments is intense training and deeply transformative. When your attention is on inner control, the question stops being, "How do I make this stop?" and becomes, "How do I act rightly while this is happening?" That shift restores agency. You don't wait for pain to disappear to live well. You live well despite pain. Over time, that posture changes identity. You stop defining yourself by what you suffered and start defining yourself by how you responded. The pain may have been hard, but it wasn't useless. It served a clear purpose, refining character, strengthening virtues, and preparing the mind for future challenges. In that sense, suffering stops being dead weight and becomes useful load. Not because it's desirable, but because it's usable. And when pain is used as training, it no longer governs life, it improves it. Marcus Aurelius, your life is shaped by your thoughts. Marcus Aurelius wrote that each person's life is shaped by the quality of their thoughts. When pain arises, the thought you choose determines whether it breaks you or strengthens you. For the Stoic emperor, thinking wasn't merely automatic reaction, but an ongoing act of choice. The mind interprets everything that happens, and that interpretation creates the inner experience. Two people can go through the same loss, failure, or humiliation and live completely different inner consequences, depending on how they think about what happened. When pain hits, the first thought is often raw and instinctive: fear, anger, injustice, hopelessness. The Stoics didn't demand eliminating that first impulse, but they insisted you shouldn't follow it blindly. The second thought, the one that comes after the pause, is what truly shapes emotional destiny. Thoughts like, "This destroyed me," "There's no way out," "I'll never recover," turn pain into something crushing. They amplify the event and create a sense of permanent closure. Thoughts like, "This is hard but bearable," "I can learn something here," "I can still act with dignity," keep pain within manageable limits. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself that the mind has the power to remove pain's excessive weight, not by denying facts, but by refusing dramatic and absolute interpretations. He knew exaggerated thoughts don't solve the problem, they deepen the wound. The force of this idea is time. A negative thought repeated daily becomes a belief. A belief shapes behavior. Behavior repeated shapes character. That's how poorly chosen thoughts can turn one painful event into a lifetime of bitterness, and how well-chosen thoughts can turn the same event into a source of resilience. Thinking well, for the Stoics, isn't naive positivity. It's precision, sobriety, and usefulness. It's asking, does this thought make me clearer or weaker? Does it prepare me to act, or does it paralyze me? The criterion isn't immediate emotional comfort, it's inner strengthening. In the end, Marcus Aurelius reminds us, no one fully controls what happens, but everyone deeply influences how it's lived. Pain may strike the body and circumstances, but the chosen thought decides whether it becomes ruin or structure. And that choice, repeated daily, is what shapes an entire life. Purpose is built in response. Purpose doesn't come from the absence of difficulties, but from a conscious response to them. When you take responsibility for your reactions, you regain the power that seemed lost. Many people believe purpose appears only when life finally becomes organized, when problems stop and everything falls into balance. The Stoics saw that expectation as dangerous illusion. Life never becomes completely stable, and waiting for ideal conditions is postponing meaning indefinitely. Difficulties are where purpose is revealed, because they force us to choose who we will be. In comfort, our decisions carry little moral weight. In pain, every choice becomes meaningful. Give in or stand firm, react impulsively or respond with clarity, run or remain steady. Taking responsibility for your reactions doesn't mean blaming yourself for what happened. It means recognizing that even while hurt, you are still the guardian of your attitude. That recognition is deeply empowering because it restores autonomy. The event may be imposed, but the posture is chosen. When someone sees themselves only as a victim of circumstances, they hand away their power. Everything depends on what others do, what fate allows, what time resolves. But when you take inner responsibility, even pain becomes a space for conscious action. The Stoics taught that true freedom isn't controlling the world, it's not being controlled by it. That freedom begins the moment you realize no one can force you to lose your integrity, your values, or your dignity without your consent. Purpose stops being abstract or distant. It becomes daily practice, choosing calm when anger feels easier, staying honest when lying would be convenient, acting firmly when fear demands retreat. Each conscious response reinforces an identity aligned with virtue. Over time, that posture creates a solid sense of direction. Even in chaos, you know why you act and where you're moving internally. The power that seemed lost wasn't in circumstances, it was asleep in your ability to respond. And when you awaken it, pain stops being only an obstacle and becomes the ground where purpose is built. Emotional stability. That inner shift generates emotional stability. Even in external chaos, there's a sense of direction. Pain doesn't disappear, but it stops commanding your decisions. The emotional stability Stoicism offers isn't the absence of feeling, but consistency of criterion. You still feel sadness, fear, or frustration, but you don't let those emotions take over the mind. They're recognized, observed, and integrated without becoming the center of decision-making. When pain governs, choices become reactive. You say what you shouldn't, break what could have been preserved, abandon what only required more steadiness. The mind seeks immediate relief, even if the long-term cost is high. Stoicism interrupts that cycle by returning leadership to reason. Even in unstable scenarios, loss, crisis, conflict, uncertainty, an inner sense of direction appears. Not because everything is clear, but because your values are. You know which principles you refuse to abandon, regardless of circumstances. That creates an inner axis that doesn't depend on the environment. Pain takes its proper place, an experience, not a commander. It informs, but it doesn't decide. It warns, but it doesn't govern. That repositioning changes your relationship with suffering because the mind stops treating it as a constant emergency. With that posture, decisions become more coherent. You don't act to escape pain at any cost. You act to preserve integrity and clarity. Often that means enduring temporary discomfort to avoid greater consequences later. That stability also reduces mental wear and tear. Without extreme swings between despair and false hope, psychological energy stays more balanced. You don't get emotionally lost with every new external event because you know where you're anchored. In the end, pain still exists, but it loses the power to define the direction of your life. It doesn't disappear, but it stops holding the center of command. And when the mind retakes that position, even in chaos, something rare appears, the ability to move forward with clarity, purpose, and dignity. In this way, Stoicism teaches that purpose isn't found outside, it's built within, through how we choose to respond to suffering. Virtue, turning suffering into moral strength. For the Stoics, the highest good in life is virtue. Wealth, status, and comfort are considered indifferent because they can be lost at any moment. Virtue, on the other hand, remains. The Stoics called indifferent anything that doesn't define a person's moral value. That doesn't mean wealth, health, or recognition are worthless. It means they aren't reliable foundations for a good life. They depend on external factors, chance, other people, and circumstances, so they can't sustain a solid identity. Virtue, by contrast, is entirely under your command. It shows up in your choices, the values you defend, and how you respond to situations, good or bad. No one can take away your ability to act with justice, courage, wisdom, and self-discipline unless you allow it. When life is organized around external goods, pain becomes devastating. Losing money, position, or comfort means losing the ground beneath you. But when life is centered on virtue, losses still hurt, yet they don't completely destabilize you. The core remains intact. This changes how you deal with suffering. Instead of asking, "What did I lose?" the Stoic asks, "How should I act now?" Pain stops being measured by external impact and becomes measured by internal response. Dignity doesn't depend on the scene, it depends on conduct. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself that nothing external can stain character without consent. A financial hit may damage comfort, but not honesty. Public humiliation may wound ego, but not integrity. A loss may bring sadness, but it doesn't force bitterness. When virtue sits at the center of life, a deeper kind of security appears. Not the security of controlling everything, but the security of knowing what you can't lose. That security reduces fear, because what matters most is not at the mercy of the world. In the end, the Stoics taught that a good life isn't a life without pain. It's a life lived with moral excellence. Everything else can come and go. Virtue once cultivated remains, and it's on that foundation that purpose stands firm. Pain tests. Virtue pain is a direct test of virtue. In difficult moments, our values are put on trial. It's easy to be fair, calm, and honest when everything is going well. True character appears in adversity. When life is smooth, virtues remain theoretical. Everyone believes they're patient until they're provoked, principled until they're tempted, calm until they're pressured. Pain breaks that comfort and turns abstract principles into concrete choices. In adversity, there's no room for an idealized self-image. Suffering exposes real impulses, the desire to retaliate, lie, run, harden, or blame. That's where character shows itself, not by words, but by action. Virtue stops being intention and becomes observable behavior. Justice is tested when someone treats you unjustly. Calm is tested when pressure exceeds your limit. Honesty is tested when lying would make things easier. Courage is tested when fear is real. Every pain calls for a specific virtue, demanding practice, not theory. The Stoics saw adversity as an inevitable exam, not a punishment, but an opportunity to confirm who you are. Avoiding the test doesn't remove it, it only delays it. Life eventually demands coherence between declared values and real actions. When someone acts with virtue under pain, something deep consolidates inside. A kind of self-respect forms that doesn't depend on external applause. That quiet integrity becomes a strength no external loss can destroy. On the other hand, when pain pushes you to act against your own values, suffering deepens. Not only because of the event, but because of the inner break. Moral discomfort often hurts longer than the original pain. In the end, adversity doesn't create character, it reveals and strengthens it. Every choice under pressure leaves a mark. Either moral growth or regret. The Stoics taught that while we can't avoid life's tests, we can choose to leave them more intact than we entered. Seneca, fire tests gold. Seneca said fire tests gold and adversity tests people. Suffering reveals who we are and who we still need to become. Just as gold reveals its purity only in fire, a human being discovers their solidity only under pressure. In favorable conditions, almost anyone can appear strong, balanced, and confident. Adversity is what separates appearance from substance. Suffering strips, masks away. It removes the comfort that props up fragile identities and exposes instinctive reactions, hidden fears, and emotional dependencies. Not to humiliate, but to reveal. Pain shows where we're still ruled by impulses and where steadiness already exists. At the same time, adversity doesn't only reveal weakness, it points direction. What knocks us down indicates exactly what needs strengthening. If loss creates total despair, there may be excessive attachment. If criticism triggers rage, the ego may be in charge. If uncertainty paralyzes, inner trust may be lacking. In that sense, suffering functions like diagnosis. It doesn't lie. It shows with brutal clarity where we still aren't free. And every diagnosis, no matter how uncomfortable, carries the possibility of treatment and growth. Seneca didn't see adversity as the enemy of virtue, but as its furnace. It's in the heat of difficulty that discipline consolidates, courage becomes practice, and patience stops being a concept. Without fire, gold stays mixed with impurities. Those who avoid pain at all costs remain unknown to themselves. They live supported by favorable circumstances, never knowing what they're capable of when those circumstances fail. But those who move through adversity with clarity gain something rare: real self-knowledge. In the end, suffering doesn't define who we are. It reveals what stage we're at. It shows the character we've already built and the character that still must be forged. And for the Stoics, that revelation, however hard, is a gift because it points to the path of continuous refinement. Integrity builds silent strength. When you face pain with integrity, you build a strength that doesn't depend on external circumstances. That strength is quiet, but deeply transformative. Integrity, in the Stoic sense, isn't moral perfection, it's inner coherence. It's acting according to consciously chosen values, even when it costs comfort, recognition, or immediate relief. When pain arrives, maintaining that coherence takes real effort. And that effort is precisely what strengthens you. Most external strengths are loud. They show up as power, status, influence, or visible control. The strength built in pain is different. It doesn't need to be displayed or validated. It reveals itself in the ability not to corrupt yourself under pressure, not to lose emotional command, not to abandon principles just to escape discomfort. That strength is built through repetition. Every time someone chooses dignity in a hard moment, something consolidates inside. Not a sudden leap, but a silent accumulation. Over time, you notice you don't react like before. Certain impulses lose power, and more space appears between stimulus and response. Because it doesn't depend on external circumstances, that strength remains when everything else fails. It doesn't dissolve with loss, rejection, or unexpected change. In fact, it becomes more visible precisely in those moments when other kinds of security disappear. There's also a deep effect on self-perception. Facing pain with integrity creates self-respect. Not inflated pride, but calm confidence. The certainty that no matter what happens, you won't abandon yourself. That confidence reduces fear of the future because the worst-case scenario stops being pain and becomes losing coherence. That strength quietly transforms choices. You don't need to prove anything to anyone. You move with more firmness, speak less, react with more precision. Drama loses space because the mind is occupied with what matters. In the end, that strength may not change the world immediately, but it changes how you move through the world. And that changes everything. Pain may keep coming, but it meets someone different, more solid, clearer, and less dependent on what's outside. That's how integrity turns suffering into lasting inner structure. Virtue reshapes identity. Every virtuous act performed in the middle of pain reinforces moral identity. You stop seeing yourself as a victim and start seeing yourself as a conscious agent of your own choices. Identity isn't formed only by experiences, but by the responses we give to them. When someone acts with virtue in a hard moment, even in small ways, they send themselves a powerful message: I still choose who I am. Repeated over time, that message reshapes self-perception. A victim mindset forms when focus is exclusively on what was lost, imposed, or taken away. In that posture, you see yourself as someone things simply happened to. The posture of conscious agency shifts attention to the only place where power still exists, the present decision. A virtuous act doesn't have to be grand. It can be maintaining respect under provocation, acting honestly when it would be easy to bend the truth, holding healthy boundaries even under emotional pressure. Those seemingly small acts have deep impact on character building. Each coherent choice weakens the narrative of helplessness. You realize that while you don't control the event, you do control your conduct. That recognition dissolves the feeling of total loss of control that often intensifies suffering. Over time, this practice builds a more stable identity. Instead of defining yourself by trauma, loss, or pain, you begin defining yourself by how you moved through those experiences. The inner story shifts from "this destroyed me" to "this revealed me." The Stoics understood that dignity doesn't depend on what happens, but on how you respond. Acting with virtue under pain builds an inner core that can't be shaken by external circumstances. In the end, that identity shift is liberating. Pain may have been unavoidable, but the response wasn't automatic, and it's in that difference between reaction and choice that a person stops being a hostage to suffering and becomes the author of their posture in life. In this context, purpose isn't tied to the final result, but to the process. Living according to virtue becomes an end in itself. So pain stops being only something to get over and becomes the ground where human excellence is cultivated. Impermanence as liberation. The Stoics constantly meditated on impermanence. Everything changes, everything passes. That awareness wasn't seen as depressing, but liberating. For many, thinking about life's transience triggers anxiety or sadness. For the Stoics, impermanence was a source of lucidity. By remembering that nothing is fixed, not pain, not pleasure, not circumstances, the mind is freed from unrealistic expectations of permanent stability. Much of suffering comes from trying to freeze what is, by nature, moving. We want relationships to stay the same, success to last forever, comfort to be guaranteed. When reality changes, as it always does, frustration rises. Awareness of impermanence reduces that shock because it prepares the mind for change before it happens. Pain becomes more bearable when it's seen as temporary. Not in the naive sense that everything resolves quickly, but in the deep understanding that no internal or external state remains intact indefinitely. Even the most intense suffering transforms over time. At the same time, this view also moderates attachment to pleasure. The Stoics knew that clinging too tightly to what feels good creates fear of loss. By recognizing that everything passes, you learn to enjoy without becoming enslaved, to appreciate without gripping. Impermanence teaches detachment without indifference. You engage with life, but you don't demand it conform to your desires. That posture generates deep calm because you stop fighting the nature of things. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself that both today's glories and tragedies would be forgotten over time. That perspective didn't reduce the value of present action, but it removed its excessive weight. Nothing is so big that it justifies losing reason. In the end, impermanence frees because it reduces fear. When you understand everything passes, you realize you can move through change without being destroyed. Pain loses its absolute character, and life, with all its fluctuations, becomes lighter to carry. Perspective. No pain is eternal. When we understand that no pain is eternal, we gain perspective. Suffering loses some of its power when it's placed within the natural flow of life. Pain becomes crushing when it's perceived as permanent. The mind projects the current state into the future and concludes it will always be like this. That projection turns a hard moment into an existential threat. The Stoics fought that exact mental error by remembering that everything is always changing. Placing suffering inside life's flow means recognizing it's a chapter, not the whole book. The painful experience is happening now, but it doesn't define everything that came before or everything that will come after. That shift in scale reduces emotional intensity dramatically. Stoic perspective doesn't promise pain will be short, but it insists it isn't fixed. Even when it lasts, it changes. The way it feels today won't be the same tomorrow, and certainly won't be the same a year from now. That understanding creates room to breathe. When suffering is seen as part of existence's natural movement, it stops being interpreted as an error in the world. It becomes a phase, hard, yes, but integrated into life's dynamics, along with growth, loss, renewal, and change. That view also prevents extreme decisions made under intense emotion. By remembering the current state isn't final, a person avoids acting as if they're trapped forever. Perspective creates pause, and pause creates choice. The Stoics trained the mind to observe the present without turning it into an absolute. They knew pain demands attention, but doesn't deserve to be turned into prophecy. Suffering speaks about now, not the final destination. In the end, recognizing no pain is eternal restores balance. Suffering still exists, but it no longer occupies the entire horizon. It's placed into the larger flow of life, and when that happens, its power to dominate diminishes, making room for patience, endurance, and clear-eyed hope. Pain and pleasure are both temporary. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself that both pain and pleasure are temporary. That reflection helps prevent despair in hard moments and arrogance in good ones. For the Stoic emperor, awareness of transience worked like an inner stabilizer. When pain arose, he put it in perspective, remembering that no emotional or circumstantial state remains fixed. That prevented suffering from being lived as something absolute or final. Likewise, when life offered comfort, success, or recognition, the same reflection protected him from pride. Knowing pleasure also passes keeps you from over-identifying with temporary victories or building identity on what can disappear. Despair is born when we believe pain defines the future. Arrogance is born when we believe success defines who we are. In both cases, the mistake is the same, confusing a temporary state with a permanent truth. Remembering impermanence dissolves those distortions. This practice creates emotional balance. In hard times, it offers endurance and patience. In good times, it offers humility and moderation. You don't get lost in suffering or in euphoria. Marcus Aurelius used that reflection to maintain the clarity needed for right action. He knew decisions made under despair or pride tend to be flawed. Awareness that everything passes restores sobriety to the mind. It also strengthens gratitude. When pleasure is recognized as temporary, it's lived more fully, without attachment. When pain is recognized as temporary, it's endured with more dignity. In the end, remembering that pain and pleasure pass doesn't reduce life's intensity. It makes it more balanced. The mind stops swinging between extremes and learns to walk steadily, aware that everything changes, and therefore nothing deserves the power to dominate us completely. Impermanence teaches detachment. Impermanence teaches detachment. Many pains arise from excessive attachment to people, expectations, or identities that can no longer be maintained. Attachment forms when we try to make the temporary permanent. We build rigid bonds with people who change, plans that depend on external factors, and identities formed under specific circumstances. When reality moves, as it always does, pain arises not only from loss, but from refusing to accept that what was can't stay the same. Stoic detachment isn't coldness or indifference, it's understanding. You can love deeply, commit intensely, and invest in what matters without demanding it remain unchanged. Excessive suffering begins when love becomes possession and expectation becomes demand. Many pains persist because the mind clings to older versions of the self. Identities like who I used to be, who I should be, or the life I planned become anchors that prevent forward movement. Impermanence teaches that holding on to what has passed is carrying unnecessary weight. By recognizing everything is in flow, you learn to let go without falling apart. Detachment doesn't erase memory or the value of what was. It simply prevents the past from controlling the present. That frees energy for rebuilding and adaptation. The Stoics saw detachment as a form of inner freedom. When you don't depend on something external to hold your identity together, you become less vulnerable to life's inevitable changes. Pain may still appear, but it won't drag on indefinitely. This learning is gradual. Letting go of expectations and old identities takes courage because it means releasing false certainty. But it's precisely that empty space that allows something new, more aligned with the present reality, to emerge. In the end, impermanence teaches that suffering isn't only in loss, but in clinging to what no longer exists. When the mind learns to release, pain meets less resistance, and with less resistance it passes more naturally, leaving room for growth and renewal. The end of cycles. Accepting the end of cycles is an act of emotional maturity. Purpose often emerges right after a loss, when we're forced to redefine who we are. The end of a cycle rarely arrives gently. It often comes with frustration, grief, confusion, and emptiness. Relationships end, careers shift, dreams collapse, identities built over years stop making sense. Resisting that ending prolongs suffering because it tries to keep alive a structure that can no longer hold. Emotional maturity is the ability to recognize when something has fulfilled its role. That doesn't reduce the value of what was lived, but it prevents the past from becoming a prison. The Stoics understood life is made of phases, and insisting on staying in a phase that's already closed is denying the natural movement of existence. When a cycle ends, the inevitable question appears: who am I now? That question, though uncomfortable, is deeply fertile. It forces you to look inward instead of leaning on old labels, external roles, or other people's expectations. In that rebuilding space, purpose often emerges, not as a perfect plan, but as a more authentic direction. Loss removes distractions, exposes what's essential, and reveals values that were previously buried under routine or over-identification with roles. The Stoics saw loss as a moment of moral redefinition. Without old structures, what remains is what truly matters: character, choices, attitude. From that core, a new phase can be built with more awareness. Accepting the end of cycles also teaches humility. It shows we don't control everything, and that change is part of the human path. That humility doesn't weaken. It makes you more flexible and less hostage to rigid expectations. In the end, loss doesn't have to be only painful closure. When accepted with clarity, it becomes a turning point. Purpose doesn't emerge despite loss. Often it emerges because of it, because it's exactly when we're forced to redefine who we are that we start, for the first time, to choose more truthfully. Resilience through change. By embracing change, you become more resilient. You understand that your current pain doesn't define your whole story. Resistance to change creates emotional rigidity. When someone insists life should remain as it was, every alteration becomes a threat. But when you accept change as inevitable, the mind becomes more flexible, and flexibility is the foundation of resilience. Embracing change doesn't mean liking what changed. It means recognizing that fighting reality's flow only prolongs suffering. The Stoics taught that everything that happens is raw material for adaptation. A resilient person isn't the one who avoids pain, but the one who can reorganize in the face of it. When pain is seen as a chapter rather than a permanent label, the inner narrative shifts. A hard experience becomes something lived, not something that defines identity. That prevents current suffering from erasing everything that came before or determining the future absolutely. This understanding brings clear-eyed hope, not hope based on external guarantees, but on your proven ability to move through change. You realize you've changed before, survived other phases, and you can do it again, even if it feels hard right now. Stoic resilience also reduces fear of the unknown. When you understand life is movement, you prepare for continuous adjustment instead of seeking fixed stability. That creates a more realistic and lasting inner confidence. Embracing change also expands your view of yourself. You stop seeing yourself as trapped in a single role, mistake, or loss. You recognize multiple possibilities for growth, even after major setbacks. In the end, realizing your current pain doesn't define your entire story is liberation. Change stops being the enemy and becomes part of the path. And on that moving path, resilience isn't born from denying pain, but from continuing forward without being reduced to it. In this way, awareness of impermanence turns suffering into transition, not condemnation. Amor fati, loving your fate. Amor fati means loving your fate. For the Stoics, this concept represents the highest level of acceptance of life. It isn't only about enduring pain, but integrating it into your personal narrative. Every event, pleasant or painful, is seen as necessary for the formation of character. Enduring pain by itself is passive. You grit your teeth, resist, and wait for it to pass, keeping suffering separate from your identity like something foreign and unwanted. Integrating pain, on the other hand, is active. It's recognizing that the experience is part of the story being built. In Stoic view, life isn't a random sequence of events, but a path of formation. Every event, even the hardest ones, contributes to shaping judgment, values, and posture toward the world. Pain isn't an error in the narrative. It's one of the chapters that gives the story depth. When pain is integrated, it stops being denied or hidden. It's recognized as a marker of learning. The question stops being, how do I make this disappear? And becomes, what did this add to the person I'm becoming? That shift completely changes the meaning of the experience. Pleasant events also matter, but difficult ones sculpt character. Comfort reveals preferences. Pain reveals principles. Adversity is where you decide what truly matters and which values are non-negotiable. Integrating pain doesn't mean justifying what happened or minimizing its impact. It means acknowledging that this experience, as unwanted as it was, had real influence on the strength, clarity, and maturity that followed. When you look back and see your journey through this lens, your personal story becomes more coherent. Instead of a sequence of unfair accidents, it becomes a story of continuous formation. That reduces resentment and strengthens identity. In the end, integrating pain into your narrative is an act of inner sovereignty. You stop being defined only by what you suffered and start being defined by what you built from it. Every event finds its place, and character becomes the thread that holds the whole story together. By practicing amor fati, you stop asking, why did this happen to me? And start asking, how can I use this the best way possible? That shift in posture eliminates resentment. Pain stops being seen as an error in the universe and becomes understood as part of the path. Resentment is born from the belief that reality failed us, that something went wrong, that we were wronged by forces outside us, by fate, or by people. As long as that belief remains, pain doesn't end. It drags on as bitterness, contained anger, and inner resistance. When posture changes, the inner narrative changes too. The question stops being, why did this happen to me? And becomes, what is this part of? That simple shift removes moral charge from suffering. Pain stops being interpreted as punishment or cosmic failure and becomes a natural element of the human journey. The Stoics understood resentment is a useless attempt to demand that the past be different. It consumes energy without producing action. When you accept pain as part of the path, the mind is freed from an impossible demand and returns focus to the present. With that understanding, pain doesn't need to be fought like an enemy. It can be moved through. You no longer feel at odds with life, but inside it. That alignment reduces inner conflict and brings more serenity. And by abandoning the idea that the universe made a mistake, you regain responsibility for growth. Instead of searching for blame, you search for practical meaning. That doesn't erase suffering, but it prevents it from becoming emotional poison. Resentment keeps you stuck to the event. Conscious acceptance allows movement. The story continues because the past is no longer a fixation point. It's a section already walked. In the end, when pain is understood as part of the path, it loses its power to harden the heart. Suffering still hurts, but it doesn't embitter. It doesn't break your relationship with life. If anything, it deepens it, making you clearer, more mature, and more prepared to keep going. Loving your fate doesn't mean liking suffering, but recognizing its role in personal growth. It's active acceptance, not resignation. The concept of amor fati, central to Stoicism, is often misunderstood as passive conformism. In truth, it requires an extremely active posture toward life. Loving your fate isn't approving everything that happens. It's stopping the fight against reality and starting to work with it. Enjoying suffering would be distortion. Pain is still pain, unwanted and uncomfortable. What changes is the relationship to it. Instead of rejecting it as useless or unfair, you recognize that this specific experience participates in the formation of character, clarity, and inner strength. Active acceptance begins with recognition. This happened. No dramatizing, no denial. From there, the mind turns toward right action. The focus shifts from the event itself to the most virtuous response possible within that circumstance. This posture is the opposite of resignation. Resignation paralyzes, creates apathy, and surrenders inner control. Amor fati mobilizes, it asks, given that this happened, how can I act with excellence? Pain isn't the end of action, it's the context where action gains meaning. By adopting this view, you stop wasting energy resisting what's inevitable. That energy is redirected into adaptation, learning, and strengthening. Reality isn't denied or romanticized, it's used. Over time, this practice builds a more mature relationship with life. You stop dividing experiences into acceptable and unacceptable and start seeing them as parts of the same flow of development. That reduces fear and increases inner confidence. In the end, loving your fate is saying, nothing that happens can prevent me from growing, acting with dignity and building meaning. You may not choose pain, but you always choose how it will be integrated. And it's in that conscious choice that suffering stops being only weight and becomes leverage for growth. Over time, this mindset produces deep inner peace. Even the hardest experiences are integrated with meaning. That peace doesn't arrive immediately or as an emotional high. It's built gradually as a result of a clearer relationship with reality. It isn't euphoria or temporary relief, but a quiet stability that remains even as circumstances shift. By integrating difficult experiences with meaning, you stop waging an inner war against the past. What happened finds its place in your narrative without being denied or romanticized. That reduces the emotional weight that painful memories usually carry. Stoic inner peace is born from coherence. When you know you responded to pain with integrity, reason, and courage, there's no corrosive regret. Even if the experience was harsh, it didn't leave a moral fracture. That absence of inner conflict is deeply calming. With this mindset, the hardest experiences stop being remembered only for the suffering they caused and start being remembered for what they taught. Memory transforms. The event doesn't change, but the meaning assigned to it evolves. This integration also strengthens inner trust. You realize you can move through hard situations without losing yourself. That reduces fear of the future because the worst-case scenario stops being pain and becomes losing clarity and dignity, something that's now under your control. And this peace doesn't depend on external approval or ideal conditions. It's born from within, from a well-resolved relationship with your own story. Even when life is demanding, the mind stays steady. In the end, deep inner peace doesn't come from the absence of pain, but from the absence of conflict with reality. When everything finds meaning, nothing needs to be denied. And when nothing is denied, the mind rests, even after hard experiences. So purpose stops depending on ideal conditions and becomes available in any circumstance. Service, legacy, and meaning. The Stoics believe the human being is, by nature, social. Purpose doesn't end in individual development. It expands into service to the whole. Lived pain can become a bridge to help others. Anyone who's moved through suffering carries understanding that books can't teach. Turning your pain into service is one of the most powerful ways to give meaning to human experience. Suffering stops being isolated and becomes shared. Marcus Aurelius saw his position of power as duty, not privilege. In the same way, pain can be seen as responsibility, the duty to grow and contribute. Legacy isn't built by the absence of flaws, but by how we handle them. The way we respond to pain inspires more than easy success ever could. When a painful experience is used to guide, protect, or strengthen others, it becomes collective purpose. In this way, pain finds meaning when it stops being only personal and starts serving something greater. Pain as the foundation of a philosophical life. In Stoicism, living philosophically doesn't mean escaping life, but facing it with clarity and dignity. Pain is an essential part of that path. The Stoics never proposed withdrawing from the world, relationships, or responsibilities. On the contrary, they defended active participation in life, guided by reason and virtue. To live philosophically is to live with awareness, not escape. It's being present in challenges, not numbed in front of them. Pain, in that sense, isn't an obstacle to the philosophical path, but one of its central elements. It's in confrontation with difficulty that principles are tested. Without pain, philosophy would become elegant theory without real application in daily life. Facing life with clarity means seeing reality as it is, without decoration, victimhood, or denial. Pain demands that clarity because it dismantles illusions and forces the mind to deal with facts. Whoever runs from pain also runs from self-knowledge. Stoic dignity comes from how you move through suffering. It isn't the absence of weakness, but the refusal to morally degrade under pressure. Even wounded, you choose to act with integrity, respect, and self-control. By including pain in the path, Stoicism avoids the fantasy of a perfect life. It teaches you how to live well in an imperfect world. That acceptance makes philosophy practical, applicable, and deeply human. Pain also teaches limits. It reminds us we are vulnerable, temporary, and interdependent. That awareness generates humility, empathy, and sobriety, qualities essential for a balanced life. In the end, living philosophically is walking toward life, not away from it. Pain travels alongside that path, not as an enemy, but as part of the terrain. And it's by crossing that terrain with clarity and dignity that a person builds a life of meaning, strength, and truth. Difficulty builds a strong mind. Every difficulty is an invitation to reflection, self-mastery, and practical wisdom. Suffering becomes raw material for building a strong mind. Difficulty interrupts autopilot. When everything is easy, we rarely question our thoughts, impulses, or values. Suffering forces a pause. It demands reflection because it exposes flaws, excesses, and illusions that previously went unnoticed. In that sense, every difficulty carries an implicit question. How will you respond to this? Stoic reflection isn't emotional rumination. It's rational examination. It's observing the situation with inner distance, separating facts from judgments, and identifying what's under your control. That clarity turns emotional chaos into a concrete problem, capable of a conscious response. Self-mastery appears when emotion demands immediate reaction, but reason takes the lead. Pain generates impulses: attack, run, blame, quit. Resisting those impulses doesn't mean repressing them. It means choosing not to obey them automatically. That repeated exercise strengthens the mind like a muscle. Practical wisdom, phronesis, so valued by the Stoics, is born right there. It isn't theoretical knowledge. It's the capacity to act well in real, imperfect situations. Each suffering lived with attention and discipline adds a layer to that wisdom. When used as raw material, pain loses its destructive character. It becomes information. It shows where the mind is fragile, where attachment is excessive, where boundaries or clarity are missing. That diagnosis, though uncomfortable, is essential for inner strengthening. Over time, the trained mind responds differently to hardship. There's less surprise, less despair, and more presence. You don't become insensitive, just more prepared. Suffering still hurts, but it doesn't completely disorganize you. In the end, a strong mind isn't one that never suffers, but one that knows how to use suffering to grow. Every difficulty faced with reflection, self-mastery, and practical wisdom becomes a foundation. And that's how, layer by layer, mental strength is built. Stoic mindset doesn't promise constant happiness, but it offers inner stability. It teaches how to remain whole, even when life fragments everything around you. Over time, your relationship with pain changes. It stops being a feared event and becomes recognized as a shaping element. Purpose then isn't distant or abstract. It shows up daily in how we think, act, and choose to respond to challenges. Many people treat purpose as a future destination, something grand that will someday be discovered. The Stoics rejected that idea. For them, purpose isn't hidden somewhere far away. It's built continuously in everyday choices. Every chosen thought in hardship is already an expression of purpose. Thinking clearly instead of surrendering to despair, questioning automatic judgments, refusing victim narratives, this is living with intention. Purpose begins in the mind. It also reveals itself in small actions. Acting justly when it would be easy to be unjust, holding discipline when no one is watching, maintaining healthy boundaries under emotional pressure. These decisions shape a directed life, even if they're invisible to others. Your response to challenges is where purpose becomes concrete. It isn't the challenge that defines life, but the posture you adopt toward it. Every difficulty offers a choice: react impulsively or respond consciously. That choice, repeated daily, builds meaning. Stoicism teaches that living with purpose means living aligned with virtue, not guaranteed outcomes. External success may vary, but inner coherence can be maintained in any circumstance. That makes purpose accessible at all times, not only in ideal conditions. When this view takes hold, life stops being a wait for something greater and becomes a steady practice of moral excellence. Meaning isn't postponed, it's practiced. In the end, purpose doesn't arrive as a sudden revelation, but as a habit. It shows up in how you think when no one sees, how you act when it's hard, and how you respond when life tests your limits. It's in that daily practice that a meaningful life is built. To live with purpose, according to the Stoics, is to live aligned with reason, virtue, and reality, regardless of circumstances. So pain doesn't destroy a purposeful life. It builds it.